What happens when a spoiled billionaire's son meets a waitress struggling to feed her family? Brace yourself. This isn't the lesson he expected. Did you know the average waitress walks almost 7 miles per shift for tips that sometimes don't even cover her bus fare? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And sometimes it feels like you're running on empty. That's the brutal reality for so many. And that's exactly what 23-year-old Mariana was living, breathing, and walking through every single night. But one particular evening, things took a turn. A boy barely out of childhood, yet draped in a $500 t-shirt, decided to laugh. He snapped his fingers dismissively, as if she were a servant from a bygone era, and then, with a flick of his wrist, flung a plate of pasta right at her. It splattered a sticky red mess all over her only work shirt. She didn't scream. Not a single sound of outrage escaped her lips. She didn't cry either, though the sting of humiliation must have been profound. Instead, Mariana simply looked down. Her gaze fixed on the marinara, slowly, defiantly sliding down her apron. And then her voice, soft but firm, cut through the din of the diner. "Sir, this uniform isn't just fabric. It's my rent." A simple statement, yet it carried the weight of her entire world. By the end of that very same night, an astonishing transformation would begin. That arrogant boy who thought money could buy everything would find himself on his knees, not in defiance, but in a small, humble studio apartment no bigger than his dad's walk-in closet. There, amidst the echoes of a life far removed from his own gilded cage, he would finally truly understand. Understand that while money might indeed purchase a myriad of things, there's one invaluable commodity it can never acquire: a good heart. This isn't just a story about a spilled meal. It's about a lesson in humanity served up hot and unexpected. Table 6 was mine. Always mine, it felt like. Or at least it had been for the past few months, ever since Mom's medication costs decided to stage their own dramatic increase. Another $40 just like that. $40 that meant more shifts, more hours on my feet, more miles clocked on worn-out soles. My feet, they throbbed, a constant dull ache that pulsed with every step. But even through the pain, I smiled. A practiced automatic smile, yes, but a genuine one too, because I knew the drill smiles often translated to better tips. And tips, well, tips, were the lifeblood that kept the lights on the fridge stocked and Mom's prescriptions filled. It was a simple equation, a brutal one, but it was mine. Across the sprawling, brightly lit room, nestled in the plush corner booth, sat Table 9. This was a different world entirely. They had the soft, leather-bound menus, a subtle marker of exclusivity. And at its head sat Logan Harwick III, the richest 16-year-old in this entire sprawling city. His family owned half the skyline, those glittering towers I could only ever afford to gaze at from a distance, never truly touch. Logan, he was practically born with a silver spoon, probably solid platinum, in his mouth. His usual order, delivered with an air of entitled expectation, was always the same: a truffle burger, hold the pickles, and an extra heaping side of attitude. Tonight, though, was different. He'd brought an entourage, 3 equally privileged friends, their laughter echoing a little too loudly. And they'd brought a new game, one designed purely for their amusement, make the waitress flinch. It was a cruel sport, played with casual disdain. They snapped photos of me on their expensive phones, the flashes momentarily blinding, as if I were some curious exhibit, part of the diner's decor, not a person. They snickered, barely bothering to hide their amusement when I politely asked if they'd like water. And then came the moment. I carefully placed Logan's truffle burger in front of him, the aroma wafting delicately. He didn't even look at it. Instead, with a theatrical flourish, he peeled off the top bun, a perfectly golden toasted brioche, and flicked it toward me, and then he sneered a truly ugly twist of his young face. This isn't what real money tastes like. The glob of forgotten pickles and melted cheese landed with a soft, sickening thud right on my apron, the second time this week. It felt like every single eye in Bella's diner, from the grizzled regulars at the counter to the young couples tucked away in dim booths, pivoted. They were all watching, waiting for me to explode, to scream, to finally lose it. Or perhaps to simply crumble, to break down under the weight of it all. But I didn't. Not outwardly, anyway. Instead, I moved with a practiced calm, scooping the messy blob back onto the plate. My voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, a thread of sound amidst the sudden, heavy silence. "Give me 2 minutes, sir. I'll fix it." And then I turned, walking with as much dignity as I could muster toward the kitchen. The swinging doors closed behind me, offering a brief, blessed sanctuary. Inside, leaning against the cold stainless steel counter, I counted. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. And I prayed that the hot, angry tears welling up behind my eyes would stay put, would somehow miraculously just vanish. They didn't. Of course they didn't. The tears came hot and fast, a silent torrent of frustration and exhaustion, but I wiped them away quickly, fiercely, with the same worn, slightly damp rag I used to clean the counters. Because laundry, I reminded myself, laundry cost quarters. Quarters I desperately needed for milk, for my brothers, for Mom. Every single cent counted. There was no room for self-pity, no time for tears, not when there were bills to pay and mouths to feed. The manager, bless her harried heart, saw the Mariana massacre. She offered almost kindly that I could go home, change, and come back. A nice gesture in theory. But home wasn't just a quick hop across the street. Home was a 45-minute bus ride, a slow, lumbering journey that felt even longer at night. And my shift. It wasn't due to end until midnight. If I left now to change a shirt, I'd lose the rest of my tips, the hard-earned cash that was already mentally allocated to groceries and utilities. If I stayed, though, I'd spend the next 6 hours smelling distinctly of garlic, stale pasta, and worse, the lingering bitter scent of shame. It was a choice between financial survival and personal dignity, a choice no one should have to make. I chose to stay, because the tips, they mattered more. My dignity could take a hit, my family couldn't afford to. So I took a deep breath, splashed some cold water on my face, and tried to scrub at the stain, knowing it was futile. When I came back out, re-entering the brightly lit battlefield of the diner, Logan Harwick was still there. He was balancing a fork on his knuckles, twirling at a glint of self-satisfaction in his eyes, as if his petty act of cruelty was some grand triumph, a trophy to be admired. The diner, it felt different now. A hushed tension had settled over the tables, a collective holding of breath. I walked straight to table 9, my back straight, my chin up, and placed the new burger perfectly assembled, this time in front of him. Logan opened his mouth, a smirk already forming, undoubtedly ready to unleash another cutting remark, another cruel joke. But before he could utter a sound, a shadow fell over the table. An older man, tall, impeccably dressed with distinguished gray at the temples. He exuded an aura of quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard, the kind that owns boardrooms and commands respect without even trying. It was Mr. Harwick, Logan's father. He'd slipped in through a side door, a planned surprise visit to his son, perhaps hoping to catch him in a moment of filial charm. Instead, he caught him in a moment of blatant disrespect. His eyes sharp and assessing immediately landed on the glaring red stain on my apron. Then they shifted to the smug, unrepentant smirk plastered across Logan's face. And finally he took in the rest of the diner, the other customers pretending not to watch but subtly, unmistakably recording the scene on their phones, eager witnesses to the unfolding drama. Sometimes silence isn't just golden, it's deafening. Sometimes silence is louder, more potent than any angry outburst. Mr. Harwick's silence in that moment felt like a storm gathering on the horizon, an impending reckoning. He simply stood there, observing, absorbing, and the weight of his unspoken disapproval was immense. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he tapped Logan's shoulder. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, calm, yet carried enough authority to cut through the diner's hushed atmosphere. "Stand up, Logan." Ever the petulant teenager rolled his eyes, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. But he obeyed. He knew that tone. Mr. Harwick then turned to me, his gaze softening slightly, but still intensely focused. "Miss, what exactly did my son do?" My voice, despite my efforts to control it, cracked. The humiliation, the exhaustion, the pressure of the moment, it all threatened to overwhelm me. "He was disappointed with the food, sir," I managed the lie, tasting bitter on my tongue. I was trying to protect Logan, to mitigate the situation, even though he hadn't deserved it. Mr. Harwick's eyes flickered back to the stain, then back to my face. A small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "That's not disappointment, miss. That's disrespect." His tone was not accusatory towards me, but a cold, hard truth aimed squarely at his son. He then asked for my name. "Mariana." I replied, my voice a little steadier this time. He asked how long I'd been on my feet today. The question caught me off guard, a sudden crack in my carefully constructed facade. I told him the truth. The raw, unvarnished truth of my day. "Since 6 this morning, sir. Before my college classes, before dropping off my brothers at the babysitter, before squeezing in a load at the laundromat." Each phrase was a testament to a life lived in perpetual motion, a relentless pursuit of stability. Then came the question about the stain. "What does this stain mean, Mariana?" he asked, his voice now almost gentle. I swallowed, the lump in my throat suddenly enormous. "It means," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "it means I walk home tonight, sir. Because the bus fare, that precious $2, will have to go towards stain remover, to try and salvage this uniform, my only one." Logan, still standing beside his father, snorted a dismissive, arrogant sound. "Just buy a new apron," he muttered, as if it were the simplest solution in the world, as if aprons grew on trees. I met his eyes then, a direct, unwavering gaze. "With what, sir?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken context, with the weight of my entire existence. It wasn't just about an apron. It was about every single choice, every sacrifice, every nickel and dime I had to scrounge and save. Mr. Harwick's jaw tightened. The anger was simmering now, a controlled, dangerous heat. He turned to his son. "Son, you're about to learn exactly what 'with what' means." And then he delivered his decree. A punishment, yes, but more profoundly, a lesson. He told Logan to follow me for the rest of my shift. No phone, no friends, no leaving, just him and me and the reality of my life. Logan's initial reaction was disbelief, quickly followed by a scoffing laugh. "Dad, I've got plans," he protested, as if his social calendar held more weight than his father's word. Mr. Harwick's response was swift, chilling, and absolute. "Change them, or change your zip code." The threat was clear, unequivocal. The diner, which had been buzzing with hushed whispers, went pin-drop silent. You could literally hear a pin drop. I figured that was it. That was the climax of my humiliation for the night. I was wrong. Terribly, wonderfully wrong. It was just the prologue. The first page of a lesson that would rewrite everything. My second job, the one that truly defined the graveyard shift, started at 3 a.m., cleaning offices downtown, high-rise buildings that felt like silent, sleeping giants. I did it so I could study during the day, so I could chase that distant dream of a degree. Tonight, though, Mr. Harwick had added an unexpected, utterly bewildered apprentice to my routine. Logan. I honestly thought he'd last 10 minutes, 5 even. I pictured him making a grand, dramatic exit, probably calling his dad's assistant to rescue him. But to my utter astonishment, he lasted. He lasted the entire graveyard shift, a silent, increasingly pale shadow trailing behind me. Our first stop after the diner finally closed its doors, and I'd meticulously finished my own cleaning duties, was the diner's dish pit. It wasn't just a sink. It was an inferno. Steam so thick and heavy it felt like breathing soup clinging to your skin, seeping into your clothes. The air was a cacophony of clattering plates, scraping forks, and the relentless hiss of hot water. Logan, standing awkwardly by the entrance, winced noticeably every time a plate clattered a loud, jarring sound that echoed in the small, steamy space. He looked utterly out of place, like a pristine white bird in a muddy puddle. I, on the other hand, just kept scrubbing. My hands, calloused and strong, moved with practiced efficiency, each motion ingrained from countless nights of this exact routine. There was no time for wincing, no room for discomfort. There was only the work. Next, the bus. Not a sleek private car, but the late-night public bus. Cardboard seats worn and stained by 1,000 journeys. Fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow on the weary faces of its passengers. A man in the back, his eyes distant, hummed a tuneless melody, a quiet, almost desperate attempt to keep his demons at bay. The air was thick with the scent of damp wool, cheap cologne, and unspoken stories. Logan, still clearly operating under the delusion that money was a universal solvent, tried to pay a passenger $20 for the window seat. The man, a weathered soul with eyes that had seen too much, simply smiled. A slow, knowing smile. "Keep your 20, kid," he said, his voice raspy. "Keep your soul." Logan, for the first time, seemed genuinely flummoxed. Money, it appeared, couldn't buy everything. Third stop, my apartment. Not a sprawling penthouse, not a manicured suburban home, but one small room. A single cramped space that served as living room, dining room, and bedroom for 3. A bunk bed dominated one wall, and tucked into it, curled like perfect, innocent commas, were my 2 little brothers, fast asleep. The air was warm, smelling faintly of old books and childhood dreams. I moved quietly, checking their homework, which was neatly taped to the fridge. Stick-figure families holding hands, a simple, poignant illustration of their love and innocence. Logan looked around, his eyes wide, absorbing every detail. He looked like he'd stepped into a museum of somebody else's life, a world he never knew existed. There was no judgment in his gaze now, just a quiet, almost reverent curiosity. I opened the mini-fridge. It hummed softly, a tired old appliance. Inside, the contents were sparse: 1 lone egg, half an onion, a single slice of cheese. Breakfast. I announced, a wry smile playing on my lips. He didn't joke. He didn't sneer. He just looked. And in his eyes I saw a flicker of genuine understanding, the kind that comes from seeing, not just hearing. At 3:15 a.m., we entered the imposing, silent office tower, a world of polished marble and hushed corridors. I handed him a vacuum cleaner, a heavy industrial beast. He stared at it, then at me. He pushed it tentatively at first, then with more force, like it was a lion on a leash, an untamed beast he was struggling to control. His movements were awkward, his brow furrowed with concentration. By 4:30 he was mopping. His expensive sleeves were soaked, his hair damp, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and the unfamiliar effort. He was no longer the arrogant prince. He was just a kid, tired and out of his depth. By 5:00 a.m., a new question born of genuine fatigue and dawning respect escaped him. "Do you ever sit down?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I told him simply, "Sitting's for people who've paid all their bills, Logan." It was a truth I lived by, a constant nagging reminder of the relentless treadmill of my life. At 6:00 a.m., as the first hint of pre-dawn light began to paint the sky, we walked to the corner store. My daily ritual, buying milk before the boys woke up. I reached into my pocket, my fingers expertly counting out nickels and dimes, each coin a precious commodity. Logan, seeing my careful calculation, reached for his own wallet, a thick leather one undoubtedly overflowing with crisp bills. I shook my head, a small, firm gesture. "Your money's not welcome in my story, Logan. Not here. Not for this." He hesitated, then slowly, reluctantly put the wallet away. We sat on the curb outside the store, sharing a single powdered donut. I carefully, meticulously split it into 3 pieces. Not 2, 3, because 2 little boys were still dreaming of sprinkles, and I couldn't bear for them to wake up to nothing. The sun cracked the sky open, painting the world in hues of orange and pink, a beautiful, hopeful sight. And then Logan whispered, his voice raw with a newfound vulnerability. I thought poor just meant you couldn't shop. I answered, my gaze fixed on the rising sun, on the promise of a new day. Poor means you count every heartbeat like a coin, Logan. Every single one. It was a profound statement, one that encapsulated the constant gnawing anxiety of scarcity, the relentless pressure of survival. And in his silence, I knew he finally understood. He finally saw. The morning bus ride back to the diner was a different experience entirely. Logan, utterly spent, kept nodding off his head, bouncing rhythmically against the grimy window pane. He was a picture of exhaustion, a far cry from the energetic, arrogant teen who had flung pasta just hours earlier. I nudged him gently. "Ask me." He rubbed his eyes, still heavy with sleep, trying to shake off the lingering fatigue. "Ask you what?" He mumbled, disoriented. "Whatever you're dying to say," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. I could feel the questions churning inside him, the new realizations struggling to find voice. He swallowed, his throat dry. The words, when they came, were hesitant, laced with a raw honesty I hadn't heard from him before. "Why do you smile at people who treat you like trash?" It was a simple question, yet it held the weight of his entire worldview, shattered and reassembling. I shrugged, a gesture that spoke of weary acceptance, but also a profound inner strength. "Because I've been trash, Logan, and I've been treasure. And both times I was still human." It was a lesson learned through countless small indignities, through moments of both profound kindness and casual cruelty. It was a philosophy born of resilience. He looked out at the city sweeping past the bus window, the towering glass skyscrapers gleaming in the morning light, built by people who he now realized probably never mopped their own floors, never counted nickels for milk. A silent realization seemed to settle over him, a new perspective on the grand architecture of wealth. He spoke again, his voice softer, more reflective. "My dad's rich. I've never wanted anything. Not really. But I've never felt this." He touched his chest, a hesitant, almost confused gesture, as if something deep inside him had shifted, something new and unfamiliar was stirring, as if a part of him long dormant had finally awakened. The feeling, whatever it was, seemed to hurt or at least profoundly unsettle him. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile this time. That's hunger, Logan. Real hunger isn't for food. It's for something more, something deeper. It was the hunger for meaning, for connection, for purpose. The hunger that wealth often stifled, but struggle often ignited. Silence rode with us the rest of the way, a comfortable, understanding silence that spoke volumes more than words ever could. The journey had been more than just a bus ride. It had been a passage, a bridge between two vastly different worlds, finally connected by a shared moment of human understanding. Back in the diner parking lot, the early morning air was thick with the promise of August heat. Mr. Harwick waited, a solitary, imposing figure beside his sleek black car. A car that I knew instinctively cost more than my mom's entire chemotherapy bills. The contrast was stark, almost painful. Logan's friends were gone, vanished like ghosts at dawn. No cameras, no eager audience, no one to impress or perform for. Just asphalt, the rising sun, and the quiet, heavy expectation of a father and his son. I thought Mr. Harwick would yell. I expected a blistering lecture, a public dressing down. Instead, he simply opened the car trunk. From within, he pulled out a fresh apron. Crisp, clean, still folded in its pristine packaging. He held it out to me. For last night, he said, his voice quiet, almost subdued. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for it, the soft fabric, a stark contrast to the stained garlic-scented one I still wore. Then his gaze, stern and unwavering, shifted to Logan. Speak. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Logan stepped forward, his shoulders curled inward, as if he carried the immense weight of the bus I rode every morning, the burden of all the lives he'd just glimpsed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound humility. I threw food at you, he began, his voice hoarse, barely audible. I thought it was funny. I thought a lot of things were funny. He paused, taking a shaky breath, the words clearly difficult to force out. I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong. The admission hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. I waited. I didn't interrupt. I just let him speak, let the truth of his realization wash over us. He continued, his voice gaining a little strength, a newfound conviction. You fed me tonight, Mariana. Not just the burger. You fed me reality. And I was starving. Truly starving, even though I had everything. He reached into his pocket, then pulling out a wad of cash. It was a thick stack of bills, clearly more than a few 20s. Tips he'd collected from his friends earlier, pretending it was all a big joke, a game. Now it was an offering. He held it out to me. This is yours, not charity. Payment for the lesson. I stared at the bills. My mind raced. This could cover rent. This could finally fix the ancient, wheezing fridge. This could maybe, just maybe, let me sleep more than 4 hours tonight. The temptation was immense, a siren song of temporary relief. But I didn't take it. Instead, I carefully, deliberately handed him the dirty apron from last night. I folded it, making sure the sauce-stained part was tucked inward out of sight, but not forgotten. Keep this, I said, my voice steady. When it dries, remember what real waste looks like. Not just wasted food, but wasted potential, wasted kindness, wasted humanity. His eyes, which had been dry through his apology, welled up. A single tear tracked a clean path down his cheek. Mr. Harwick stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his son's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and quiet pride. Pride tastes bitter, doesn't it, son? He murmured. Logan simply nodded, unable to speak, the weight of his transformation evident in his silence. Mr. Harwick then turned to me, his expression softening further, a genuine warmth radiating from him. "Miss Mariana, my company runs a scholarship program. It's specifically for students like you, those who work tirelessly while pursuing their education. Full tuition plus a generous stipend to cover living expenses. Consider yourself accepted." My knees almost buckled. It was a lifeline, a dream I hadn't dared to fully articulate. I wanted to say yes, to shout thank you, to embrace the incredible opportunity. But my first thought, as always, was for my family. What came out was, "Can it wait until next semester, sir? My brothers, they really need me right now. I can't leave them." Mr. Harwick's smile widened, a soft, understanding gesture. "It'll wait, Mariana. Education doesn't expire, but ignorance does." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a card, thick and embossed. "Call when you're ready. The offer stands." Logan, wiping his eyes, added, his voice still a little shaky, but filled with a new earnestness, "And if you ever need help with the boys, I know a great tutor, me." I laughed then. A real laugh. The first one in weeks that felt truly unburdened, truly joyful. It felt like coins spilling from a broken jar, bright and loud and utterly liberating. It was the sound of hope, of possibility, of a future that suddenly seemed a little brighter. Word spreads fast in small diners. It's like an old telephone game, but instead of words, it's whispers, glances, and knowing nods. By the lunch rush, every regular, every familiar face was asking about the new apron. They eyed the pristine white fabric, a stark contrast to my usual, perpetually slightly stained one. I just smiled a genuine, easy smile and told them, "It's the same job, just different fabric." But we all knew something had shifted. The air in Bella's diner felt lighter, charged with an almost imperceptible change. And then Logan came back. Not with his usual entourage, not with a snide remark, but alone. He sat at a small, unassuming table, not the corner booth. He ordered water. Just water. And when he left, he didn't just leave a tip. He left a $20 bill folded neatly under a handwritten note on the receipt. "Still learning." I taped it above the sink, a constant, tangible reminder. Every time I washed dishes, every time I scrubbed away the grime of the day, those two words stared back at me, a silent testament to growth and humility. A week later, he brought his little sister, a whirlwind of pigtails and giggles. She colored on the placemat, a vibrant, chaotic masterpiece, and then with utmost seriousness handed me the picture. 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright crayon sun. A family. I hung it right beside my boys' homework on the fridge, a silent, beautiful conversation between 2 worlds. Another week passed, and then he asked, tentatively, almost shyly, if he could bus tables on Saturdays, unpaid. The manager, a woman who'd seen it all, thought it was a prank. A rich kid bussing tables. Let him, I told her, a quiet conviction in my voice. Let him try. He showed up the next Saturday in sneakers that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. But he showed up. And he learned. He learned the sacred art of not dropping glasses, the delicate balance of a tray piled high with dirty dishes, the rhythm of clearing tables efficiently. He learned the quiet dignity of service. One night, a particularly irate customer, a man with a booming voice and a perpetually dissatisfied expression, started yelling about cold fries. Logan, who was clearing a nearby table, didn't hesitate. He stepped in, calm and composed. "Sir," he said, his voice respectful but firm, "I'll warm them for you. There's no need to raise your voice." The man, taken aback by the unexpected intervention, grumbled but quieted. Logan, with a subtle smirk that was a far cry from his old sneer, added, "Respect is free. Refills are extra." I grinned so wide my cheeks cramped. It wasn't just a boy bussing tables. It was a young man finding his voice, his backbone forged in the fires of humility. Transformation. I realized looks a lot like a spoiled kid discovering empathy. First day of fall semester. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of turning leaves and new beginnings. I rode the bus to campus, a new backpack slung over my shoulder, but still counting my nickels for bus fare. The scholarship, Mr. Harwick's incredible gift, had hit my account like a sunrise, a sudden burst of warmth and light after so much darkness. It wasn't just money, it was freedom. I bought textbooks, not brands. I bought pencils, not pity. I showed up to class early every single day. Sat front row, my notebook open, taking notes like they were lifeboats, each word a crucial step towards a future I now dared to believe in. On breaks, I FaceTimed the boys from the library steps, showing them the grand old campus, the bustling students. They waved excitedly at the stone lions guarding the entrance, their innocent cheers echoing through the phone. Logan, true to his word, babysat sometimes. It was a bizarre, yet heartwarming sight. A giant teenager still finding his footing in the world, coloring superheroes with two preschoolers. His hair tied back with a bright pink scrunchie he'd found on the sidewalk. He wasn't just babysitting. He was becoming part of our family, a big brother figure to my boys. One night I got a text. "I used to think heroes wore capes," it read. "Turns out they wear aprons." I smiled, a warm glow spreading through me. I replied, "And sometimes backwards caps," remembering the old Bella's diner hat he'd started wearing. He sent a selfie back, a wide, gap-toothed grin, his eyes glowing with genuine happiness. The diner hat perched jauntily on his head. I saved the photo. It was proof. Proof that money can buy a lot of things, yes, but real change, the kind that truly matters, has to be earned. It has to be lived. Finals week. A blur of caffeine late-night study sessions and the relentless hum of the library. I pushed myself studying until the vending machines went dark, until my eyes burned with exhaustion. The bus dropped me off at my apartment building at 2 a.m., the city quiet and sleeping around me. As I fumbled for my keys, I saw him. Logan. He was on my doorstep, jacket wrapped around my littlest brother, both of them fast asleep. He'd read them bedtime stories, probably until his voice gave out, until they finally crashed, safe and sound. I nudged him awake gently. He stirred, blinking sleepily. "You're hired for life," I whispered, a laugh bubbling up, a mixture of exhaustion and profound gratitude. He yawned, stretching his long limbs. "Does it come with dental?" He mumbled, a flash of his old wit returning. We laughed, soft, quiet laughs, so as not to wake the neighbors or my sleeping children. Inside, the fridge hummed. A different hum now. A full hum. I opened the door. Milk, apples, cheese. Simple things, yes, but for me, they were a symphony of abundance. Luxury spelled in lowercase letters. My eyes burned the familiar sting of tears, but this time they were tears of overwhelming relief and joy. I wanted to cry, to let it all out. Instead, I made grilled cheese sandwiches. At 3 a.m., the kind that oozes onto the pan, gets those perfect, crispy, golden edges. We ate in silence, the gentle scrape of forks against plates the only sound. Our hearts, though they were talking. He spoke first, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Dad wants to meet the boys. Maybe take us all to a game. Nothing fancy, just minor league. You know, to celebrate." I swallowed a mouthful of butter and pride. They'd like that I managed a lump forming in my throat. He looked around my tiny kitchen, this humble space that had seen so much struggle, so much love. He looked at it like it was a palace. Funny, he said, a thoughtful expression on his face. Your place is smaller than our pool house, but I've never felt this full. I smiled a knowing, understanding smile. That's because you're finally eating real wealth, Logan. The kind that nourishes more than just your stomach. Graduation day. The air buzzed with excitement, a palpable sense of accomplishment. I wore the same shoes I'd bussed tables in, the ones that had carried me through countless shifts, countless miles. But today they were cleaned, polished, and worn with pride. Mr. Harwick, a proud smile on his face, sat in the stands waving a foam finger that to my absolute delight read, Mariana Logan. Ever the chronicler recorded every second on his phone, tears streaming down his face, unashamed. When they called my name, Mariana Santos, I walked across the stage, each step a victory. I heard my brothers cheer, their young voices piercing through the roar of the crowd, a sound that filled my heart. As I took my diploma, my mind flashed back to the marinara sliding down my cotton apron, a vivid, almost cinematic memory, to the cold, early morning buses rattling through the pre-dawn streets, to the sparse egg, onion, cheese breakfasts eaten in quiet determination. I thanked the dean, a polite, formal gesture, but my heart, my very soul, thanked the mess. It thanked the struggle, the hardship, the unexpected detours. Because struggle, I realized, is the greatest professor. It teaches lessons that no textbook ever could. Later, reporters, drawn by the story of the scholarship student who had overcome so much, asked for my advice to kids like me. To those battling against the odds, dreaming of a brighter future. I looked directly into the camera, my voice clear and steady. Keep your head high and your apron clean. Someone's always watching, yes, but more important, you're always watching yourself, and that's the audience that truly matters. That night, I laid the freshly framed degree on the kitchen table, right next to the boys' crayon-scribbled coloring pages. Same table, same small apartment, same life in so many ways, but now with a vastly bigger horizon, a future stretched out before us, full of promise, full of possibility. 2 years later, the scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air. I opened a small cafe, a dream finally realized, and named it Second Chances. It wasn't just a business, it was a mission. We hire single parents, giving them flexible hours and a living wage. We offer free meals to anyone who helps bus tables for 30 minutes, no questions asked. And every Tuesday, without fail, we close our doors early so our staff can attend classes. On me. Because education, I learned, isn't just about personal advancement. It's about lifting everyone up. The logo on the door, subtle but meaningful, was a tiny apron stitched into the heart of a coffee cup. Our first investor, Mr. Harwick, of course. A silent partner, but a guiding force. And our first employee, proudly wearing a Second Chances apron, Logan. Now, a sophomore in college, majoring in social work, his eyes bright with purpose. He jokes that the pay cut from his dad's allowance was worth it because he finally felt useful. Truly useful. I still keep the original stained apron, the one that started it all, in a simple frame behind the register. Customers often ask why. Why display a dirty old apron, I tell them. That spot reminds me where I started and where I refused to stay. It's a constant visual reminder of the journey, of the lessons learned. Some days a teenager full of youthful bravado and casual cruelty will mock a barista. I don't say a word. I just pull the framed apron down from its hook, set it gently on their table, and let the silence and the stark visual do the teaching. Works every time. It's a powerful unspoken sermon. So, who's really rich in this story? Is it the kid who can buy the entire restaurant but doesn't understand the value of a single smile? Or is it the one who can buy respect, not with money, but with genuine kindness and an open heart? The answer, I think, is clear. Next time you see someone scrubbing ketchup off your booth or patiently refilling your water glass, remember this story. Remember that apron. It might not be a cape, but for that person, it could very well be their uniform of courage, their symbol of resilience. Drop a kind word, leave a fair tip. And if you're feeling wild, truly wild, say thank you. Say it like you mean it, because sometimes that's all it takes to make someone feel seen, to make them feel valued. Comment below. What small act of kindness made you feel seen when you needed it most? Share your stories. Let's create a ripple effect of gratitude. And if you haven't already hit subscribe, join our community. Because we're not just watching stories unfold, we're writing them one conscious, compassionate choice at a time.